Hey guys, Timcast music producer Carter Banks here, wanting to wish you a Merry Christmas. We just signed our first artist to Trash House Records, and we have our first debut single coming out December 12th. Pre-save it on your favorite stream platform at trashhousechristmas.com. Support our work.
From NBC News, U.S. seizes oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela, Trump says. President Donald Trump told reporters about the seizure Wednesday after previously saying Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's days are numbered. I believe we actually have the footage here from the Daily Mail. Let's check this out. Yo, this is wild. Unclassified.
This is weird, the captain's now type stuff.
Yeah. Dramatic moment. Trump's warships seize Venezuelan oil tanker. It was a helicopter. I don't know if that counts as a warship. Look at this footage. Seems like they didn't actually have a rough go of it, to be completely honest. I mean, presumably it's just a merchant vessel, so it's not well guarded, but they took it. They seized it. They say footage released by the Trump administration on Wednesday showed American forces swooping on the tanker in helicopters and rappelling down ropes. Troops with guns drawn darted upstairs to the bridge to take control of the vessel off the coast of Venezuela. Attorney General Pam Bondi wrote in a statement today, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Homeland Security Investigations, and the U.S. Coast Guard with support from the Department of War executed a seizure warrant for a crude oil tanker used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran. For multiple years, the oil tanker has been sanctioned by the United States due to its involvement in an illicit oil shipping network supporting foreign terrorist organizations. The release of the video comes hours after it was reported on Wednesday that the tanker had been seized, sparking fears of a potential blockade and spiking oil prices. No name was given for the stateless vessel, nor was it confirmed precisely where off the coast of Venezuela the raid unfolded. Trump called it the largest one ever seized and warned other things are happening. The capture sent oil prices climbing sharply, with Brent crude rising 1.21% to $62.69 a barrel, amid fears the escalation could disrupt global supply. So I'm seeing on Fox, they said they questioned whether this was an act of war to seize a Venezuelan tanker. I guess the question is, how much do we care? And I mean, are we opposed to the actions of the United States seizing foreign countries' vessels in this way? Or, here's a question. Although I'm not in favor of getting involved in war with Venezuelans could do it, there's a question of, are sanctions the better option and enforcing sanctions the better option than going to direct war and invading other countries?
Well, usually, but it sounds like we did that, the sanction part, and then they violated the sanction. So I usually err on the side of sanctions, but if you're going to sanction someone and then they ignore you and you have to do more sanctions and they ignore those, and it's like, well, I guess sanctions aren't going to work. The next step of escalation is, you take the product yourself.
Right. That's the point. I mean, this is obviously because we have sanctions on Venezuela and Iran. And the U.S. is basically saying to our trade partners and, additionally, the people we have under our boot, don't do deals with them. And they're trying to bypass these sanctions. So the U.S. says, we're not going to, well, I'm not saying they're not planning on invading these countries. But for the time being, it's, you don't want to abide by the sanctions, then we're going to take it from you. The next step, probably we get closer and closer to full-scale war and invasion, which I think the majority of Americans would not want.
I don't think America's going to actually put boots on the ground in Venezuela. I think if there is any kind of action, I think it'll be strikes. I think Maduro is very concerned about his neck. He's released a lot of videos saying, we want peace. He did the whole singing the Imagine song or Give Peace a Chance or something like that, trying to convince the United States that he doesn't want war. Look, he's seen what happens when the United States decides that they don't like a government. He's seen it you've seen it for the past 20 years in the Middle East. He doesn't want that to happen to him. Now, that doesn't mean that the U.S. isn't going to perform strikes. That doesn't mean that the U.S. isn't going to continue to do operations like this. But as for oil prices going up, I mean, I just looked it up. Venezuela produces like 1% of the world's total oil supply. Now, they have great, really, really high reserves, but because of the government in Venezuela, they can't get that out of the ground. They kicked all the companies out. They kicked all the people that ran the oil fields, ran the oil rigs, and they said, get out of here because we're going to nationalize this. But they didn't have anybody that could actually run the operation. So they don't produce any oil when it comes to the grand scheme of things. Or at least it doesn't make it to the market. So I don't imagine that this is going to have a significant impact on oil prices globally, and I don't think that Maduro wants the United States to start doing strikes. I don't know that he actually leaves, but I do think the more the United States applies pressure, the more likely it is that he does something like turn tail and run.
Well, the question is for us and everyone here, as we are preparing the show, is do Americans actually care about this? Because I'm going to go ahead and say the answer is no. And what I mean is, obviously, if you go to an American and say, hey, the U.S. just seized a Venezuelan tanker and this could lead to war, they're going to go, yeah, that's really bad. However, if you say you have the option to hear about the Venezuelan oil tanker or political drama, podcasters are fighting. We know which one they're going to pick.
Over here at the shiny light, everybody.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
But this is like Venezuela's like Vietnam. It's jungle. I mean, it's a nasty place to send troops into. And what Saddam Hussein was, I think I heard this from Scott Horton or Dave Smith, that, I mean, Saddam Hussein was essentially begging the United States to stop and to give the United States what it wanted. But what the United States wanted was control of Iraq. They wanted the trade route and they wanted the resources.
What they wanted was Saddam Hussein out of power. If Saddam Hussein had left, the United States wouldn't have gone in.
I don't think they wouldn't let him leave.
I don't know about.
This is what have learned is that they wanted the country because they wanted to run from Kuwait up through that Qatar
if
pipeline.
If he'd have left, the United States would have installed a government anyways.
True.
So if he had left, there wouldn't have been a war. The U.S. would have just installed whatever government it wanted.
I think he said, I don't know what the quote. I don't want to misquote Saddam Hussein, but that I'll give you everything you want. Just let me stay in power. And they were like, that's not.
That was the deciding factor. The United States didn't want Saddam Hussein to stay in power. They wanted him to leave. If he and his sons had left before the United States initiated strikes, the U.S. wouldn't have initiated strikes. I don't know that they would have done debathification and all the terrible policies that they did afterwards. I mean, it's likely because they had some really terrible advisors when it came to Iraq about the Iraq war. But he wouldn't have, like the U.S. wouldn't have, carried out all the strikes, and the death toll would have been significantly lower.
It's just generally like,
or likely would have been.
It's like that. What are they? Confessions of an Economic Hitman. They talk about the 3 steps. First, you try and bribe the leader to leave, and then you try and assassinate the leader if he won't leave, and then full-scale invasion if you can't assassinate him. Mm-hmm. Tried that with Saddam. Basically, they got him post minimal invasion. We were already committed at that point that they got him. Yeah. So I think it's the same thing as going on in Venezuela.
And Tim, Puerto Ricans, I think, care a little more because of the military presence there. I own quite a bit of land where the military base is, like actually adjacent to it, Roosevelt Roads, where one of the biggest military bases in the world was in the past, and then it shut down. Then the city, Sabre, which was a thriving town, then kind of closed down quite a bit. Now the military's come back, which does mean like a good economic uptick, but they feel a little insecure down there where I live, right? And in terms of the military presence there as well.
We are in a political realignment right now, and I'm very curious as to where this goes. This is the most dramatic political alignment we've seen in probably the last decade, maybe longer. And the reason I bring this up is I started a poll. No more wars or no, Venezuela started it, is currently 50-50 with 1,000 votes.
No more wars or no, more wars.
No.
I feel
like the comma, after the...
There's no comma in it.
When you're bringing on wars, strikes, like Phil said, compared to boots on the ground is a big difference. Like, we've given so much money to Ukraine and Israel and letting them bomb people. If we can, not put boots on the ground and just do strikes, I feel like the American people will be more okay with that than they would putting.
I think you're right. The U.S., the American people generally are okay with a sanitized version of war that they watch on TV.
Yes.
When body bags start coming home, that's when they get pissed.
Yeah, but I'm saying you take a look right now at all the political drama that's going on, the bifurcated view of everything. The Young Turks and Candace Owens now are like basically one audience, left and right combined.
The Young Turks with Candace?
Anna Kasparian talks about how she's a huge fan.
Oh.
And if you look at their comment section, they praise her, they love her, and Nick Fuentes as well. There's a realignment happening. And I bring this up not to get into the political drama right away, but we've got our audience, even right now, 1,524 votes, 50-50. Currently, it's at 49 no more war, 51 Venezuela started it.
Wow. Right.
So what we're seeing is, when it comes to the narco boats, I got no problem with the strikes on that, because invading a country like Afghanistan or whatever makes no sense. Why are we trying? Oh, I know why we're doing it, to enforce the liberal economic order, SWIFT payment system, these things. When it's war with Venezuela in the Gulf, like that, I totally get, right? These guys are shipping drugs into our country and killing our people. Seizing an oil tanker, however, is an act of war outright. It's silly to think otherwise. If our oil tanker was seized by Venezuela, we declare war in 2 seconds. So this is an act of war. The question is, will Venezuela actually say, okay, now we're at war, or will they be like, just stop, leave us alone? Point is, the fact that the Trump base went from no more wars to, well, no, Venezuela started this one. It's different. Shows that there is a fracturing. And I think moving into the midterms is going to get wild because we basically have 4 political parties. You've got the fringe left wackos and the Democrats. Then you've got the Republicans. And then you've got, actually, I shouldn't even say 4 because the Republicans is a bunch of different factions. You've got libertarian, right-leaning, conservatarians. You've got technically groypers. I don't know. Nick never really liked Trump in the first place. But you've got the anti-Israel right, the pro-Israel right. So the right is actually a bunch of different factions.
Feels like
everything's being shattered.
Since 2008, the first time since 2008 that the people have more power over what's going to come than the government. This felt like this with the Obama election. It just felt like it in 2006 and 2007 with the advent of internet video. I said at the top of the show, I was like one of the first YouTube video bloggers in 2006 talking about the fucking war in Iraq and that war. Bush, like I talked to him directly through this technology, and we moved shit. Like people's hearts and minds changed. Thousands, they get featured on YouTube with 60,000 people would see like one kid's thought. And I feel like now with Trump kind of with the Epstein stuff and the way he's kind of disappointed so many people previously in his camp, I feel like it's similar.
Afghan war and all this stuff, I don't think the American people liked it just because we were going over there trying to give them democracy. Whereas here in Venezuela, like they're giving drugs to our people. They're killing our own people. And if we have to take an oil freight or whatever it's called, because it's on sanctions, at least we're doing moves on sanctions instead of sitting on our hands and not doing crap.
Yeah. So to that point, I think you're right. I think Raymond has a point. This is about enforcing sanctions. Now, whether or not you would consider it an act of war, you can make the argument, make the debate. That's perfectly legitimate. But this is about enforcing sanctions. And another thing, if you saw the press release the DOD put out, maybe it was the White House, but it was about Europe and about what's going on with the changing population in Europe because of all the migration. They've just started a Western Hemisphere command, the military has. The U.S. is looking to restructure the whole way we operate militarily, and we're looking to actually have more influence on South America than we do on Europe. Largely because Europe is a changing population, right? The influx of immigrants from the Middle East is making Europe less aligned with the foundational principles that the United States has. I mean, in the UK, they put something like 12,000 people in jail for Facebook posts last year. There's all kinds of trying to marginalize certain political groups in parts of Europe. Marie Le Pen, the whole right wing in Europe has been marginalized, or there's been attempts to marginalize them and keep them out of power. And I think that the United States has seen that and is saying, look, in 20, 30 years, it's going to be a whole different world unless you change your policies. So we're going to start focusing on our hemisphere and start focusing on the Monroe Doctrine as the foundational principle that we're organizing both our economic forces and our military forces with. And I think that the situation in Venezuela is the start to that.
And for me, I think that we really need to think about the fact that we get played all the time, right? So the weapons of mass destruction, we got played on this. And you don't know for so long until it starts becoming apparent that there is something else going on. And I do think about things like this, like the Hunger Games, where you've got people pitted against each other with puppet masters pulling strings based on other narratives that they're privy to that we're not. And they capture our hearts when it's something that makes sense to us, and then we can get on board with it. But when you look at the fact that Aleister Crowley, did anyone know the name?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was the correspondent to Winston Churchill.
I did not know
He was the one that gave him the V for Victory sign. He was an advisor to him.
He was deep into the occult.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And it openly talks about human sacrifice in his own books, like the Book of the Law, hundreds of children. He openly talks about these things. And then now he's an advisor to Winston Churchill. And you start getting these themes of, okay, well, what if this is actually even about human sacrifice? And we're not getting told that, but what we are getting told is a narrative that makes sense to us. So then we volunteer our young men, which it says to do in the book, in Aleister Crowley's books, to make your young men a sacrifice. I think that these are things to consider.
I'm going to go ahead and say, I was thinking about this when the news broke, and I hate it, but I'm actually more in favor of it than I thought I would be. I don't like the idea of invading foreign countries. I don't think we should invade China. I don't think we should be involved in the Middle East. I don't think we should be providing funding for Israel or Ukraine or any of these countries far, far away. But Venezuela, while it's not directly bordering us, is actively involved in our. It's Monroe Doctrine. It's actively involved in our continent, sending drugs, sending criminal gangs, and actively aggressing upon us. And so right now, if we are seeing a light escalation where it's, hey, look, these narco boats, they're gone. We're not tolerating that. That I completely agree with. We get to the point of the seizure of an oil tanker that's violating U.S. sanctions between Iran and Venezuela. And now it's basically like, listen, Venezuela has been aggressing upon us. We're not trying to go to full-scale war, but we're going to put the boot down at some point. I don't want to see boots on the ground in full-scale warfare with Venezuela, but I got no sympathy for the commies down there.
Yeah, I mean, look, Chinese influence in South America is extremely prescient to the federal government, right? Like, you've got these Chinese fishing fleets, basically, that are going and depleting the waters around a lot of countries in South America, around Chile, around Argentina. And you've got Chinese influence in Venezuela and in multiple countries. It makes perfect sense for the United States to change its focus from Europe to South America, because Europe is still technically far away. You know, it's like it's on the other. It's got a lot of influence from the Middle East. It's got a lot of people that do business in the Middle East over there. Not that the U.S. doesn't, but it makes perfect sense for the U.S. to focus on South America and try our best to keep influence from Asia out of South America.
And, you know, we talk about the Suez Canal a lot. I think that's a big part of why we're in the Middle East, is to protect that route for both military and trade. But talk about the Panama Canal. I mean, if we lost control of the Panama Canal and there was some global war,
bro.
Yeah, you need that canal.
Hands down.
Yeah.
But that's what China was trying to build, a Nicaraguan canal 10 years ago. And that is, it's not a literal act of war, but holy crap. Does that literally threaten? I'll put it like this. How many people died building that thing? The U.S. spent an obscene amount of money to create this canal so that ships can move between the oceans through this thin strip of land. And it was very dangerous. And it was a lot of work. And it's the Americans who led that charge. Certainly there's questions about what do we owe the country of Panama and what do they get for it? Totally fine. But to hand it over to China, that's insane. And, I know Ilad would be sitting here smiling and giggling over this conversation. There is an interesting question of, and we've brought this up numerous times, if it is not a U.S. unipolar world, then what is it? China. Mm-hmm. And then what do you think the Chinese Communist Party is going to do to everybody? We've already seen what they do with TikTok and all this other garbage. So there is a rock and a hard place. That being said, the U.S., in my opinion, I am not an isolationist, and I don't think that the U.S. should never be at war. I think the wars we were given with Iraq, Afghanistan, with Ukraine, with our never-ending support for Israel are, I'll put it simply, first and foremost, there's no justification for it. Mm-hmm. It was all just BS. It's all lies. They don't actually tell the American people why it matters. And the reality is, I think for the most part, it does not. I think there are important reasons that the United States was trying to be in Afghanistan, largely to surround Iran because Iran won't fall in line. Why are we going and policing in Iran? So why are we in Afghanistan? I guess there are challenges because there's questions of a power vacuum. But this idea that the United States can dump all of this money endlessly as being the world police is silly. You cannot have simultaneously the U.S. giving away its labor while overspending on military. Eventually, the whole thing just implodes. All that being said, I understand there are serious challenges. People have asked me, okay, Tim, if you think we shouldn't be in Afghanistan, what about South Korea? And I'm like, that's actually a fair point. What do we have, like 30K troops in South Korea or something like that? We're basically, it's a colony, effectively. Or not. It's not fair to say because we don't have Americans setting up homes and everything. But our military is basically keeping that somewhat stable. And I imagine if they left, South Korea is going to be in serious trouble. China and North Korea are going to just sweep through. I don't exactly know how these things play out. What I can say is, while I'm not going to pretend to know everything about the Middle East and all that stuff, Venezuela's knocking on our door. This is very, very different. If the U.S. is unwilling to answer threats on our doorstep, then what is the point of having a Coast Guard or a military in the first place?
Exactly. When we had Vivek, Iowa caucus of last year, I think, last year, yeah, I mentioned machine gun nests on the border. And I was like, someone's going to have to say that first to soften the idea of actually using military force to protect our borders. But someone's got to do it. So I did it. And I still believe it. I think that it is a good use of military to protect our borders. Now, we have this post-Roman idea. The way the Romans worked is they were attacked so brutally that they decided we're just going to go out there and find the threats before they attack us. And they conquered everything around them, and then they just kept going and going. So we've kind of got that style of protection. We'll go out there and find the threats and destroy them before they come. I don't want to see that happen in Venezuela. But like when at the top of the show, I'm like, think of this as an alien, Ian, that's coming into this situation blind. I'd say first thing I would say is, are these sanctions legit that the U.S. put, or is it all dog and pony show? And then, but now, my subjectivism comes in, and I'm like, well, I value free speech. So at this point, I feel like I got to get behind the American military. The American way of life, at the very least, the U.S. Constitution. And I know if this country falls, that Constitution's done. If the country stands, we at least have a chance to protect it.
Yeah.
Isn't all sanctions bullshit? Like, they're all BS. The only reason they say they're important because the United States of America, because we're powerful and we declare them to mean something. It's like money. You guys talk about money. Money has no value unless you declare it has value. So it's the same thing with sanctions.
I'll say about the Constitution. I could tell you that it was bought with the blood of millions of martyrs, right? And what I'm referring to is the Protestant Reformation of the 1500s. Okay, so that the premise of that was we refer to free speech. They refer to liberty of conscience, freedom of conscience, which is the deeper part of it, right? So that you have the freedom to think and believe what you will about God, about life. You have civil laws that you abide to, but your freedom of thought is so critical to human greatness. And so much so that if you were to take it from somebody and you impose religious laws of how you see and worship, that you would deprive the practice of being able to genuinely worship God and genuinely do good and kind acts.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.